previous video was a stripping run, and I told you I would be doing a spirit run and had that video also. So this is what we're doing today. My boiler is got about 4 gallons of 45% alcohol by volume in here. It's a small run, and I did it just for this video. It is in my 26-gallon boiler, my 3-inch pot still head with a 28-inch live bed condenser. I have my cooling water input at the bottom of the condenser, which is where it should always be, and the drain at the top. Now, when you got this, your cooling water just right, it'll be nice and cool down here, and just a little bit warm up here. That's all the flow you need. You don't need, a full stream or anything. You can see I don't have clamps on any of my hoses here. There's no pressure. I just slide them up on there. They fit really nice and snug. They seem to never leak. I do have a temperature thermometer installed in my boiler, which that's the thing I highly suggest. I don't necessarily say need for one in the pot still column. Because all that's going to do is your temperature is just constantly going to rise throughout the room. That's just the nature of a pot still. It's not like a reflux still. Now, I do suggest a thermometer in your boiler if you want to consider that, because that tells me more than anything. When my temperature gets to about 120, then I turn my cooling water on. I know in just a few minutes, when it gets about 140 or so, I'll start getting some drips, which I'm getting now. Now, these are the 4 shots. You don't want to run it very fast. I'm still pretty much in the heat up process. It's not quite there yet. I have my TG5500 set on 12 amps right now. Did a slow warm up since it's a small batch. You don't want to warm up too quick, especially if it's a small batch, because you can possibly get what they call dry firing of your electric element. And I think basically what that is it will heat up so hard and fast, it creates air bubbles around the element, and those air bubbles are just like it has no liquid around it, so it gets extremely hot in that spot, and it can burn your element up. So I suggest, especially if you're doing a low wash, start up at a low heat, and as it starts to heat up, you can turn it up a little bit if you want, but I would never go above 12 or 15 amps, say heating up anything 5, 6, 8 gallon or less, okay? And that's just, it'll work, but that'll extend the life of your heating element and things like that, I believe. Now, as you can see, we're getting slow drips. That's what we want, especially when we're in the 4 shots. We don't want it, if you run it real slow, that takes the vapors off. Your 4 shots or your acetones and things like that, and they evaporate at a much lower temperature than the desired alcohol you're wanting, which is 10, 12 degrees higher. So if you heat up slow and you get really slow drips, you make sure to get all that out of your product. So that's where we're at right now. As this continues on, I'm going to, when I get out of my 4 shots, and maybe when I get out of the heads a little bit, I may speed it up a little bit, but I'll probably never be much past a really fast drip. If you run any faster than it, makes it extremely hard to make your cuts. Now, I will say for today, all I have is quart jars. I don't have any smaller containers, so I'll probably be collecting about 1/4 of a jar when I get into my product, and I'll be numbering each one, and I'll show you how to do that. And the reason for that is if you collect in small amounts, especially when you're learning to make your cuts, and especially if you're running a small batch, it'll make it much, much easier to discern from the parts, the heads, or the tails. Personally, I like to separate the heads and the tails as much as possible. You can blend some of that back for flavors. That's just something you have to play with and decide what you want. Now, I will say this is for my micro distillers. I'm not tasting any of this. All I have a permit for is ethanol fuel. When I finish this demonstration, it will be mixed with some gasoline and put in my storage tank. I do keep some of the 4 shots separate, but I've used them only for cleaning purposes and charcoal lighter. but they're great for cleaning all the oils and stuff off of my columns before I put a coat of sealer on it, so that I don't have any oils from my hands or anything like that from working on it. But I do want you to know this will all be denatured when it runs over. This is strictly for demonstration purposes only. I do have my ethanol permit from the TTB, very easy to obtain, and I suggest highly, if you're going to make ethanol or distill, you at least have this. This will allow you to run, if I remember right, I think it's 10,000 gallons a year, and it's totally free. It takes a little time. Some of the requirements are you've got to have a separate building. You can't do it in your garage, and if I remember right, it's been a little while, they'll do a phone interview and ask you about the containers, how you're going to store it, what you're going to use it for, why are you distilling it, have you ever distilled before, things like that. It's pretty simple. It's free. Once again, now this is strictly an ethanol fuel permit. It does not permit you to distill spirits and sell, bottle, or anything like that, or consume. They must be denatured. Okay, I just want to make that clear. This is strictly demonstration. Okay, like I said, you can see this stream picking up a little. I'm going to show you where my thermometer is at on my boiler. Okay, now what I'm going to do, this stream is picking up too much. I don't want to run that fast in my 4-shots. Now here's my TG5500 controller. I need to make a mount to put it on my wall, I understand. I'm going to slow it down to about 11 amps. We'll see what that does to our stream. It should start to slow down. If it doesn't, we'll back it up some more. But I do not want a stream coming out, especially collecting my 4-shots. You know, maybe I may take that a little too far and collect a little too slow, but safe is better. So, like I say, this is to teach you how to run my pot stills. So, there you go. That's about right. That's about where I want it. So if you're running a TG5500 and you got about 5 gallons in there, I'm actually on 11 amps, and it seems to be working real well right there. But you can control this thing so well. The stream is picking up some again, so I'm going to slow it down some more. We're going to go back to 8 amps. You see that change there? The dial's on 8. We went from 11, or I'm sorry, yes, from 11 to 10. It's on 9 amps. I'm sorry, not 8, 9 amps. And I will keep slowing it down however much I have to make sure that I don't get anything but drips in this first part. And I'm going to collect, we suggest 6 to 8 ounces. I'm going to collect at least a quarter of a jar, you know, a half pint, maybe even a pint. I don't like to take chances with 4-shots, so I'll come back when the 4-shots are gone and give you more on how to collect, and then I'll talk to you a little more about making. So I think we found a sweet spot on the controller for the amount of wash we have in our boiler. I'm still running at 9 amps on my TG5500 controller. I'm pretty sure that's probably about 6 to 8 ounces of 4-shots, which is, you know, that's what I suggest collected to get rid of all those. So we will check here. And I'll set this jar here. We're going to pour this in and measure and see what we have. Right at 8 ounces. Now this is a plastic measuring cup, and I'm only using that to check the 4-shots. I don't suggest having plastic in your touching your distillate in any way or form, especially when it's coming out at a high proof, because it'll leach flavors and things out of the plastic that are not healthy or desirable in any way. If you're making fuel, you know, use all the plastic hose or whatever you want, it's not going to matter there. But if you're running a small craft distillery and you're trying to get started running, you never want any plastic coming in contact with any of your product. Now that's just my opinion, some may vary, but that's kind of a rule of thumb. So there you go, and I'm going to leave our, actually, I want to take this filter out while it's in heads. Now what I use sometimes is This is just a stainless steel funnel. It's got the the perforated thing in the bottom, insert to keep any solids from going through. But what I do is I take my activated charcoal, clean it up really good, and then I have some cheesecloth here that I put a certain amount in. It's just not measured, just put some in it, whatever will fit in there. And then I always lay a coffee filter right under that also. Now, I would only do this if I was suggesting that you're going to keep the product for consumption. If you're keeping it for fuel, it doesn't matter. But for a craft distillery, if you're wanting to do that, then what you would need to do, put your charcoal in here, and I go ahead and run some of it through there before it ever gets in the jar. Some people carbon filter a lot of it later after they're finished and they've aired it out, made their cuts, then they carbon filter it. That's just a practice that's I learned over the years of seeing people distill things like that. So it just kind of evolved with me. And you'll see this drip is a little bit faster than a drip. And on the 3-inch pot still, I could probably run even a little bit better than that, faster. With the larger diameter column, the more takeoff speed you'll get. And that's because it allows more vapors into the column. Now with that said, on any small amount, you don't want to run very fast. It doesn't matter. And like this went to a stream there now, and I don't want that right now. So I'm going to turn my, alright, I set it on 8 amps then. Now we'll see, that should start to slow down here in just a minute. Give it just a few seconds, there we go. That's how quick the electric will respond, and that's changing at 1 amp. So you can really control, you can replicate a run very easy if you find something, if you're a craft distiller and you find something that that flavor is perfect. If you use the exact same recipe, the same amounts in your boiler, you can replicate it if you keep good notes, especially with the electric, because you can do everything exactly the same. So that's my opinion on electric. I never ran electric until I started handling these controllers. And I decided I needed to try it, see how it works, and I'll be honest with you, it's wow, the control is amazing. I would never suggest using gas again. I mean, some people, you don't have a choice. It depends on where you're at and what you're doing. And the thing if you run gas is just remember that you need to really keep safety first in mind, keep fire extinguishers around, good water hose, because the distillate coming out of there is very, very flammable. And if you have an accident, knock your jar over, if any of it splashes in that flame, you're going to have a problem. So that's a suggestion from me. And never, ever, ever, I don't suggest run any gas burner of any kind indoors. If you're in your shop or whatever you got, be sure to have the door open. But for fire reasons, I just don't recommend it at all. But that's a choice you have to make. So we're going to try to collect some more of these heads. And what I'm going to do here is, when this jar gets to about, and I'm using a guesstimate here, I'm not being real accurate, but when this jar gets to about here, because I have a small batch, so I'm collecting in very small jars, and if you're learning to make your cuts, that's exactly what you need to do. Then what I'll do is pull this jar off, I'll change it out, and I will number it. And I'll start at number 1 and all the way through the run. Then what I'll do is demonstrate, and I'm doing this strictly because I don't have a coffee filter out here, but I do have some nice little paper towels, and they work real well. I just tear a little off. This is just to let air pass through and keep bugs and stuff out of your product. And again, like I said, if you're making fuel, none of this makes any difference. This is kind of an instruction. Most people running a pot still are not making fuel. So, like I say, this is instructions for a craft distiller that is making a spirit to sell. Or, if you have a craft distiller's license and you just want to make it for yourself, then that's up to you. what I do is I take the ring out of my jars, the flat part, I keep the ring, take the seal out, lay your paper towel, coffee filters work fantastic, I just don't have any out here in the shop right now. Then you just screw this lid down, makes a nice filter. This already has a number on it. I went ahead and numbered some of these, and when I put the lids on, I'll make sure I get the right number. But then number these, and I'll show you after we're through here. We'll have a collection of jars with numbers on, and let that set at least 24 hours. It'll air out some of the more volatile alcohols. Let's say the nasties, or what I call it, you know, the Angel's Share or whatever. Some of that will evaporate out in as much as 24 hours. The smell will change and everything. So then what I suggest to do is you come back, and like I said, I'll demonstrate. You take your middle jar, kind of smell it, you know. You'll see it smells really clean and neutral smelling. And as you go to the front of the run, it's going to have a more distinct, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a totally different odor, a stronger odor. And then when you go toward the end of the run, as you get toward what we call tails, it's going to smell, it's comparable to wet cardboard. It's hard to explain it. Some people compare it to a wet dog, and maybe it's kind of similar, but it has a definite odor too. And so that's how you can discern the difference from your heads and your tails. So we'll be back in just a minute when I get a few more jars collected, and I'll show you how we number them and so on and so forth. But this is pretty much it. This is how we'll be collecting my heads. And when I think that I'm out of heads, and I kind of go by the smell here, when I can tell the smell has changed a lot, then I'll speed up my controller, and I'll start collecting just a little bit faster. And I'll probably go to, it's speeding up a little on its own right now. So I may go to like, you know, just a very small stream. Right now the temperature on my boiler, temperature is at 180. So that's the vapor temperature inside the boiler. Of course, this vapor cools off as it comes up here. It's probably not that warm now. With that said, earlier I should have told you when your boiler's heating up, so when it gets to about 120, you can feel your column here to start to get warm. If you don't have a thermometer, when you feel that starting to get warm, go ahead and turn your water on. Like right now, you can't hardly lay your hand on it. The copper really transfers the heat, and that's what makes it so desirable when distilling. And plus we're removing sulfides and nasties and things like that. But you can tell it's really warm there. So I go by touch and feel a lot. It's just me. You may not want to do that. But like I said, if you don't have a thermometer, when you feel this column starting to get warm right here at the base, go ahead and turn you some water flow on. And I also want to show you how much water I'm running through there. Give you an idea of what you need. A small pump will do the same thing. There it is. I have my vice grips on there just to keep my hose from flopping out of my sink. I'm lucky enough to have a stainless steel sink out here in my shop where I work, and so that helps when we're doing these distilling demos. But that's all you need. Like I say, it's not a lot of water. Actually, I'm probably running too much because that's real cool. The water, if you get it right, will actually be a little warm. So I'm going to slow that down a little bit and not use quite so much water. So that's what you have. As you can see, I have my paper towels here ready for put on my lids. I have all my jars ready that I plan on using. I have my hydrometer and test jar there. And when we pull the first jar off, when I think we're going to stop, we'll do some testing here, and I'll show you, about what proof. And again, even on a spirit run, your proof is going to start out high, and it's going to drop throughout the run. That's the nature of a pot still. Reflux still, you'll get to an alcohol by volume, and it'll pretty well sit there and run until it starts to change the product coming out, the grade of it. So I hope this is helpful to you starting out, and I'll be right back when we make another change. Okay, I want to show you here, starting to get toward the end of this. Here's the jars that I've collected. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got them all numbered on the top of the filter. As a matter of fact, I decided to do that to be easier to read. And here's what my water has ended up. I'm sorry. here's what my water has ended up being. It's as you can see, man, it takes very little water and it's just barely warm, but that's just right. So it takes just a tiny bit of water, and so you can see, I mean, you could run this thing pretty fast because you could always put more water through it, and it's just barely warm up here. About right there it's getting warm. That's pretty warm here at the top because that's hot vapor there, and it's just really nice and cool down here. But it's cool here as you go up. There's my exhaust hose, and it's getting pretty warm about right here. So, but what I want to show you is I've been running a decent straight stream, and I'm hoping you can see that it's starting to really taper off. The reason being is I'm getting to really close to 200 degrees in my boiler, and it has reached the level off point of my heater inside the boiler. So in order to keep my stream up, if I want to run it as fast as it has been, then I will have to increase the power on my controller, which I have already done some as it increased in temperature here. Then I had to keep steadily increasing my amperage. Now I may be running that just a little fast, but for a 3-inch, you know, that's not bad. I wouldn't ever run any faster than just a very small stream. And like I say, when you first start out, drips is what I suggest. And so we're going to turn this up just a little because we're really getting close to the tails. And you know, when your temperature in your boiler gets to when it gets up around anything above 200, then it's not going to be long. You're going to start getting into tails pretty quick because you know water evaporates at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, depends on where you're at as far as your sea level, but we're real close to 212 here in Kentucky. So the higher that gets, and you'll be able to see when we start getting into tails, you can smell it. It's not into tails yet, it's still nice and clean smelling. So I'm going to turn my controller up some. As you can see, I am up to 14 amps now, and I'm going to go, let's go to 16, see how much it speeds up. Okay, see how quick it reacts. But I'm going to go ahead and run it there. It's getting toward the end of the run, and I'm ready to you know, I'm getting ready to stop it, so I'm just going to go ahead and speed it up and run some more out. It'll be in tails here shortly. Now when it gets back to the tails, I will come back and let you see, you know, that too. But you can see when you get into tails, it'll start getting oily looking as it goes into your jar, and if you run deep enough, it'll even get cloudy. So once again, I've collected, I want you to see the amounts, small amounts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start it over here 5, 6, 7, 8. Leave them set overnight, come back. You can smell right now there's a difference in them from the first to the last for sure, and from 1 through 4 there's a difference also. If you smell 4 and go to 1, you're going to be able to tell it. So if I were a micro distiller or craft distiller or whatever, that's how I would do it, especially starting out learning how to make my cuts. I will put all this back together, and we'll be using it for fuel in our lawnmowers and pumps and things like that around here. And then, like I said, we keep it for cleaning purposes also. So I'll be back in just a minute and show you when we hit the tails. Here we are, we're starting to get into the tails, and I've turned up my controller quite a bit. The distillate's pretty warm coming out, which when I get into tails, I just crank it up and go. My temperature right now on my boiler is right at 212. Let me bring in here. I don't think you're going to be able to see you can almost see tails sometimes. It gets kind of an oily look when it runs into there, but you can definitely smell it and tell it. I can smell it right now. Tell that I'm in tails. It's just got a distinct different smell. And you can see the boiler temperature is at right at 212, so you know, when it gets to that point, you know, if the vapor is 212, you're pretty much into water. And this is the vapor temperature in the boiler. It's not into my liquid. So that kind of gives me a pretty good indication of where I'm at. Now I have cranked up my controller just to run this on out. And I'm right on 21 amps. So it's almost maxed out, not quite. So I'm just trying to run it on out, and it'll actually start to get cloudy probably here in a moment. But that's kind of, and you can see since I've turned it up, I'm getting some little steam, and that's from the hot distillate, what that is. And like I say, it's awful cool in here. I've got the air set on 65, and if you question that, I'll show you right there. So my son says I freezes him to death in here with me working, so I like to keep it cool, man. But there you go. Like I say, you might be able to see that. I hope you can. Let me try to zoom in for this and see if you can see what I'm talking about when I say get a different angle on the jar. Maybe you can see that. You can almost see it going down in there. You can see a little, it looks like kind of oil going in there. It's some, starts to do that more when you get into the tails pretty deep. It'll probably start to get cloudy here in just a minute. But like I said, I know I'm in tails. Man, you can definitely smell it. It's the best way I can describe it really is a wet cardboard smell. That pretty well sums it up, but there you go. I've collected including the tails would be 12 half pints, but then also I wanted to tell you, as I started getting into tails, I didn't have enough of these jars, so I dumped the other part of my tails in here, and there's no doubt in my mind they're tails, so I just dumped them in that jar to free it up. But I'll go ahead and run it a little bit farther, and then next time I was to run, what I'll do is I'll pour all this into my boiler the next time I run a wash and run it through with my next run. So there's the tails. Like I say, I don't keep. I run the tails out and I just put them back in the boiler, rerun them, along with the heads. When I figure out where they're at and separate them, then that's what you'd want to do. But when you're making fuel, we mix it all back together and redistill it, because in a pot still, you're not going to really be able to make fuel. It's more for a craft distiller or someone making a product to sell. But if you're running fuel, which is what we're going to do here, we'll dump it all back in the boiler. What I'll probably do is dump all this run back into my boiler next time I run my flute, and get the alcohol by volume up into the low 90s, and then we'll use it for cleaning stuff, and like I say, burning it in our equipment around here. But man, I mean, I've got this. I'm just almost condensing all the water now, just to show you how efficient these condensers are. Some people question how efficient they are. My controller's wide open. The temperature is now 214 in the boiler, and it's still cool here. You can lay your hand on it. This is still cool, so it's still knocking down more vapor. I mean, if it's very efficient. It'll do everything a 3-inch or 2-inch pot still can do. This would probably even work on a hillbilly flute, honestly. It might have to be a little bit longer, but man, they're very efficient. Mainly because you're putting cool water in all the time. You can see even up here where the drain is, it's warm, but it's cool enough I can put my hand on it. So as long as it's cool here and you can still put your hand on it here, it's pretty much going to condense everything. Now what some people do, you can take some copper mesh packing, roll it up small, not tight. You don't want it very tight. You're going to blow through this. Slide it up in your condenser, and it will even make it more efficient because that copper mesh will pick up the coolness from the pipe, and it holds it right in the middle, so all your vapor has to go through that. But there's really no need in it, but if you want to do that, it'll make it a little more efficient, and you might get some of this steaming stopped, but I don't ever worry about it. I just let it go. Like I said, I'm not making anything to drink anyway. It's strictly for fuel here, so. But I'm showing you how to do it if you want to make it. If you're wanting to open a micro distillery or a craft distiller, you know, it's not real hard to do. It takes a little practice, a little time. The hardest thing is learning to make your cuts, and that just takes some time and experience with your nose and your taste. So there you go. That's it for now from Hillbilly Stills, and just hope this has helped you a little bit. I get a lot of questions about people wanting to make a spirit run. People getting started out in the business want to know, you know, the proper way to run their pot still. Even though this is small scale, if you have a large pot still, everything is just scaled up. You know, you basically run it the same way. You know, if you had a 100-gallon still, well, you know, you'd have probably a 4 to 6 inch column on here, pot column. Well, you'll be running more than a little bitty tiny stream. You'll run quite a bit, but it's the same principle, and it's just bigger amounts. So there you go. Thanks a lot.